Bloody New Year. A True Horror Story Introduction. Hollow Creek, a small, snow-covered town surrounded by dense woods, came alive every New Year's Eve. The townsfolk gathered at the old church for the midnight lantern walk, an ancient tradition said to keep restless spirits at bay. Generations of Hollow Creek residents had passed down the rules of the ritual. 1. Always walk in pairs. 2. Never speak during the walk. 3. Never look back. Most of the younger generation considered it a quaint superstition, but the elders swore by its importance. That year, a group of teenagers, Evelyn, Marcus, Sarah, and Jake, decided to test the rules, laughing in the face of the old legends. They would soon learn that some traditions are best left unbroken. Chapter 1. The Tradition. The night was crisp, the air heavy with the scent of pine and the faintest hint of decay. The church bell chimed as the townsfolk lit their lanterns. A golden glow illuminated the snow-covered ground, and whispers of anticipation filled the air. "Does anyone actually believe in this stuff?" Jake scoffed, adjusting his scarf. Evelyn smirked. "It's just a walk in the woods. The rules are just there to make it spooky." Sarah glanced at the woods nervously. "My grandma used to say the spirits get restless if we don't follow the rules. She said she saw something once." Marcus rolled his eyes. "Your grandma also thinks cats steal souls in their sleep." As the group joined the procession, Evelyn whispered to her friends, "Let's make this year memorable. Let's break the rules." Chapter 2. Breaking the Rules. The lanterns bobbed like fireflies as the townsfolk entered the woods. The path was narrow, bordered by gnarled trees whose branches intertwined above like skeletal fingers. Halfway through the walk, Evelyn nodded to the others. They slowed their pace, letting the crowd drift ahead until they were alone. "Let's start with Rule 1, Evelyn said, stepping away from Sarah. "No pairs." Sarah hesitated. "I don't think this is a good idea." "Come on, it's just a story," Marcus said. Reluctantly, Sarah followed. The group spread out, their lanterns casting long shadows on the snow. Next, they began whispering jokes, breaking Rule 2. Their laughter echoed unnaturally, as though the forest itself mocked them. Finally, Marcus stopped abruptly. "Hey, what's that?" "What?" Evelyn asked. "I thought I saw something move." "Probably just a deer," Jake said, rolling his eyes. But Marcus turned and looked over his shoulder. His lantern flickered and his face went pale. It's right there," he stammered. "What is?" Evelyn asked, her voice tinged with annoyance. Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he dropped his lantern and ran. Chapter 3. The Unseen Stalker. The group chased after Marcus, their footsteps crunching through the snow. He stopped abruptly, panting, his eyes wide with terror. "Marcus, what's wrong?" Sarah asked, grabbing his arm. "I saw something. A shadow. It was huge. It moved between the trees." Evelyn shook her head. "You're just spooked because we broke the rules." But then Jake's lantern flickered and went out. The darkness pressed in like a suffocating blanket. A faint whisper drifted through the trees, sending a chill down their spines. "What was that?" Sarah whispered. "Probably the wind," Evelyn said, though her voice quivered. The whispers grew louder, indistinct, but filled with malice. The shadows seemed to stretch toward them, and the path that once felt familiar now seemed alien. "We need to get back to the others," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "No," Evelyn said firmly. "We can't let some stupid shadows scare us. Let's keep going. We'll prove there's nothing out here." But as they pressed on, it became clear they weren't alone. Chapter 4. A Gruesome Revelation. The group stumbled upon an old cabin hidden deep in the woods, a place none of them had ever seen before. Its roof sagged under the weight of years, and its windows were black pits. "Let's check it out," Evelyn said, ignoring the others' protests. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and rot. An old journal sat on a dusty table, its leather cover cracked and brittle. Evelyn flipped through the pages, her expression growing grimmer with each entry. The settlers had written about their encounters with a malevolent spirit bound to the woods. It thrived on fear and hunted those who broke the pact, the midnight lantern walk. The final entry read, "We failed. It took them all. The lanterns were our only protection. Now it comes for me." Before they could react, a loud crash came from outside. The whispers returned, louder now, and the shadows outside the windows seemed alive. Chapter 5. The Hunt begins. The group fled the cabin, but the woods seemed to shift around them. The path twisted and turned in ways it never had before, leading them deeper into the forest. Jake was the first to go. A shadowy figure lunged from the darkness, dragging him into the trees. His screams echoed for a moment, then stopped abruptly. "Run!" Evelyn shouted. They ran blindly, their lanterns barely keeping the darkness at bay. But one by one, the shadows claimed them. Sarah tripped and fell, her lantern shattering. She screamed as cold hands dragged her into the darkness. Marcus and Evelyn were the only ones left. Chapter 6. The Sacrifice. Marcus was panicking, his breaths coming in short gasps. "We're going to die," he muttered. "Not if we make it to the cemetery," Evelyn said, recalling the settler's journal. "That's where the spirits are bound." They ran toward the old cemetery, its wrought iron gates barely visible through the snow. But the shadows were relentless. Just as they reached the gate, Marcus was pulled back, his lantern extinguished. Evelyn screamed but didn't stop. She entered the cemetery and found the central mausoleum. She lit her lantern and began the sealing ritual described in the journal. The spirit appeared, its form a mass of writhing shadows with glowing red eyes. It loomed over her, its presence suffocating. As Evelyn chanted, the spirit let out an ear-piercing shriek. Light erupted from the lantern, enveloping the spirit. The shadows dissipated, leaving behind an eerie silence. Epilogue. The town found Evelyn the next morning, lying unconscious in the cemetery. She was the only survivor. The woods were silent again, but the townsfolk knew the cost of breaking the tradition. Evelyn moved away from Hollow Creek, unable to face the memories. But every New Year's Eve, she lit a lantern, whispering a prayer for her lost friends. Morale. The Midnight Lantern. Walk wasn't just a tradition, it was a pact with the unseen forces that shared the woods. The teenagers' arrogance unleashed an ancient horror, proving that some legends are rooted in truths too dark to be ignored.